Hello and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports for today's 5 things learned from the third round of the 2020 CURRIE Cup. Before we get into all the sort of takeaways from the past weekend, a very interesting weekend of rugby and quite a lot of impact really on the log and basically the sort of rugby in general in terms of a couple of decisive results that have kind of opened up the competition a lot, as well as given a bit of indication on certain sort of larger things within the SA Rugby environment. Before we do look at that though, please do subscribe to the channel. Bottom right hand corner there, we are chasing 400 subscribers for the end of the year. There's just 16 days left to try and get 75 more people, so please do subscribe right now. Smash like on the video as well. Jump in the comments, let me know what some of the takeaways that you took away from the weekend itself. But without any further ado, let's look at number 1. Right, now it's a bit early to sort of make the sort of overarching statement that they have in fact, but SA Rugby, after sort of lockdown, after the whole breakdown Super Rugby, came out and said that they are going to see sending the Stormers, the Sharks, the Bulls and the Lions to Europe, and hopefully what will be an expanded Pro 16 tournament. Now the Cheetahs came out and obviously were not very happy about this. We've seen the whole thing. They considered taking legal action. They thought it was very unfair. They said that it wasn't right. They'd done well enough in the Pro 14 to justified staying there, and that they shouldn't have been sort of pushed to the periphery. And so far at the moment, well, the big thing that the Cheetahs said is that they why not use the opportunity, this tournament and Super Rugby Unlocked, to sort of decide, you know, which top 4 teams will be, you know, because they said at least if they don't make it, then they can sort of hold their hands up and say, well, we don't deserve it. Right now, they're currently 8 points off 4th place, the Lions in 4th place, and the Lions beating this weekend was a big statement in terms of which 4 teams are the best teams in South Africa. So right now, as it stands, it looks like SA Rugby has in fact backed the right side. Look, it can all change. A Cheetahs win this weekend, which looks quite likely, and the Sharks and the Lions lost, for example, and suddenly the Cheetahs are back on the Lions' tail, and you know everything changes. However, a Lions win this weekend suddenly, you know, stretches a sort of a gap, or keeps that gap against the Cheetahs, who still have some very big fixtures to play. So, you know, it's early days to be able to say that SA Rugby at these 4 are the top sides, but at the moment they do seem to be the best sides in terms of, you know, the Lions being able to beating the Cheetahs, beating the Western Province. You know, whereas the Cheetahs after that sort of Bulls victory haven't really been able to compete with the sort of the traditional top 4 sides itself. Now, something that it's quite obvious is, but you know, maybe just the way it was going, is that there's been a huge momentum shift with the Sharks going and beating the Bulls this weekend, because the Bulls, since that loss against the Cheetahs, have been the top side in the country by a long way, and they've been winning in all sorts of circumstances. You know, they've been winning against with 14 men. They've been winning, you know, whilst being sort of level at halftime. They've been winning despite maybe not being the best side in the game. They sort of looked at a side which just know how to win and know how to get a result no matter what the performance was. And on the weekend, it kind of looked shaped up like it was going to be a similar case, but the Sharks did very well to hang in there and then take the lead and to really grind out a very good victory. And the Bulls should have had a draw if Morné Steyn had kicked that penalty over. But very importantly, the other unions will sit there and say, you know what, it's playoff rugby come semi-finals and final, and an 18-minute performance, the Bulls can be beaten. And just, you know, when I say winning's a habit, losing's a habit, sometimes there's sort of an aura built around a team that is playing very well, and you kind of go into a game thinking, sure, we really are up against this. But the Bulls lose another game, for example, before the playoffs, and suddenly the other side will sit there saying, you know what, they're actually nothing that special. They're into a good run, but there's still cracks in that side, which has been underperforming for quite a number of years. So it's quite important for the grand scheme of things that other teams believe that they can beat the likes of the Bulls, and the Sharks demonstrated that very well this weekend. Something that's been very impressive lately is Coenie Bosch, and his kicking on Saturday, well, his whole round performance on Saturday showed that he's, you know, definitely back on the Bosch radar, and he's had a couple of opportunities, you know, had very limited opportunities to take on the Bosch shirt, but you know, especially with Pollard being injured, Alton Yankees is certainly the number 2 flower half in the Springbok system. But you know, I think, you know, you look at Damian Willems, who's struggled quite a lot, whereas Bosch has been thriving so far this season, and Saturday was a very good example of just how much better Bosch is playing at the moment. He's kicking better, you know, his game management in general is getting a lot better, and I think he's kind of sort of jumped the queue and definitely deserves to be looked at in that Box squad next year. There will always be a couple of questions about his defense, but you know, same sort of thing with Yankees, and you kind of look at the pros and cons and their attacking ability, you know, and how much that can bring to the side, even if it means maybe not having the best defense in the country. But I think he's been playing well enough, and he keeps putting his hand up. A couple of man of the match performances, so he is definitely on the block radar and definitely earns to have another chance to sort of stake a claim for that number 10 in the green and gold. So this is a bit of a controversial one at the moment, and I think a lot of fans are quite upset because we've seen a lot of yellow cards, red cards for head clashes and what is being considered violent conduct, which 5 years ago, 6 years ago wouldn't have been the case. And a lot of the fans and a lot of players are getting quite frustrated at almost the direction that the game is going. That people sort of saying it's becoming soft and that's becoming less sort of pure because it's just the games are being ruined by what people are saying are unnecessary refereeing calls. The likes of the Jacques Van Nooyen red card 3 weeks ago, the Jacques Van Nooyen yellow card this weekend, the Marius Lowe yellow card this weekend. The fact that as soon as there's a head clash, it is deemed violent conduct or foul play, basically. And what frustrates me is that the process goes, right, well, it's head clash, violent conduct, so it's a red card, and then are there mitigating factors? And I think it's just such a dangerous way to go about it, to go and say, well, it's a red card, but because he's a bit low, it's a yellow card, or something like that. Surely you look at it and you sit there and saying, you look at it and you go, oh, that's a dangerous collision. So I'm thinking it looks like a yellow card. Is it a red card? And then you can look at mitigating factors and say, well, no, because it's not a red card, because it's low, because it's this, or because it's accidental, or because it ducks into it, or whatever reason, loses footing or something like that. But I just think it's so dangerous to go, right, it's a red card, and then maybe, let's find reasons why it's not a red card. I'd much prefer a sort of a bottom-up approach where you go and say, right, well, it looks a bit dangerous, so we're going to go penalty. Are we looking at a violent conduct? Was it really serious? Was it very dangerous? Okay, it is. Okay, so then we're going yellow card. Or are you, and work that way up. Because I just think that we all get so frustrated at, and look, people that deserve yellow cards and violent conduct and foul play absolutely has to be punished. And there is still a lot of room for yellow cards and red cards in the game. Whether you want to look at changing the red card so it's a matter of the player goes off for 20 minutes and after that 20 minutes another player can replace him. So that same player is still out for the game, but the team doesn't lose a player for 60 minutes if it happens 20 minutes in. But I still think there's a big role to be playing for yellow and red cards. However, I just think that because we know the impact it has on games, we need to be careful in terms of the laws and the way the laws are going. You've still got to balance the player welfare. That will always have to be the number one factor in all these decisions, and that is the reason. But you're going to have to sort of sit there and say, where do you draw the line between what is just going to happen on a rugby field, because that is the sport, and what is protecting player welfare? Do we start looking at making all players wear scrum caps and head guards and trying to protect the players, or where do we go? Because I think it gets a bit dangerous when you're starting to have yellow or red cards in every single game, which it's just it disrupts the flow of the game and becomes quite you don't want a referee to be in the middle of the game and to be any sort of more than just the person that kind of dictates how it goes. And now at the moment, we're now looking and sitting there saying FC officials have direct control, not direct control, but a direct impact on what the game outcome actually is. I just think that there needs to be a lot of reviewing, especially in the off season, and how we're going to move forward so that we can sort of try and address this issue while still keeping player welfare as the top priority, but trying to find that balance between how you approach the disciplinary proceedings surrounding that as well. So an interesting one here, where because obviously all the games have been played behind closed doors, in theory, lots of people are saying that home advantage has been lost because you don't have the crowd support. Going to play against Newlands with a lot of really die-hard Western Province supporters can be quite an intimidating place to play. And you can look at that Bulls win in Newlands and sit there saying, well, there's an evidence that home ground advantage has been lost. However, if you go look at some of the key results, teams are still doing a lot better at home than they are on the road. You look at that the victory on the Chiefs versus the Bulls, the fact that came in the Free State, the fact that when the Bulls just completely outclassed Stormers, that was at Newlands. That was at Loftus. When the Lions really thrashed the Griquas, it was at Ellis Park. When the Griquas pushed the Sharks to that 1-point victory, it was in Kimberley. So I think there's definitely, whilst maybe it's been reduced, there is a certain amount of home ground advantage because teams do seem to be playing a lot better at home, and that becomes largely a lot to do with sort of altitude versus sea level. When the Lions are playing against a side from a Sharks, a Western Province, where they're not at sea level, and they're coming up here. Sometimes that fitness in the air and the ability to be able to kick those sort of long range distance definitely does come into it. But you look at the results, and there's still definitely a firm advantage to playing at home versus having to travel. I mean, you're thinking about having to travel now and the difficulties and stuff like that. It's not quite as the same as what it was before COVID. So there's definitely a lot more admin in traveling as opposed to playing at home. And you look at the results, teams, I mean, the Sharks beating the Bulls at Kings Park this weekend. There does definitely still seem to be a slight edge to actually playing at home. So I don't think we need to worry too much about that sort of it all being neutral right now, because with no fans it doesn't make a difference, because it evidently does make a difference because teams are playing at home a lot better. Remember the Pumas versus Stormers game at Nelspruit and how close that was, so it's the proof is in the pudding. They are, if you look at the results, the home sides are generally playing, sides are generally playing a lot better, getting much better results at home. Even if they're losing, they're generally putting in better performances at home than they are on the road. And those are the 5 things that we took away. Let me know if you took anything else away, what you thought of the weekend that was past of round 3. Going into round 4, we will be doing another live watch along. Lions versus Sharks on Saturday. It should be a fantastic game at Emirates Airline Park. Kickoff was at 7 o'clock. We will be live just before then. So do come out and hang out with us during that match. And please do subscribe to the channel, bottom right hand corner there. Smash like on the video. Jump in the comments. Let me know what you think of the content, what you think of the competition, and any thoughts you might have. My name is Stephen, and I will chat to you very, very soon.